All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Matty here from Chill TCG, and welcome to a new weekly video series called kind of the weekly analysis, right? We're going to be looking through all of the online tournaments on the Play.Limitless platform. We're going to be taking a look at the deck distribution. We're going to be taking a look at all the different deck lists that placed pretty well in these tournaments, and hopefully give you guys a good idea of what are the best decks going into the new week, as well as just sort of, kind of giving you an update on what the format looks like on a week-by-week basis. I know, guys on the channel, you guys probably know what Chill Series is. You guys probably see our videos where we, break down the best decks from our weekly series, Chill Series, as well as the Grand Finals match and whatnot. But there are a lot of really other great tournaments that are on the Limitless.com platform, and we're going to take a look at all of them. And every week we're going to just kind of give you a basic rundown of what the meta looks like. This week we're going to be taking a look at last week's meta, so from April 12th through the 18th roughly, and we're going to just be ripping through all these tournaments. So right here we're on we're on Play.Limitless. We're on the completed tournaments platform. And right off the bat here, we're probably going to start with Hegster's Season 4 #1 with 371 players. This tournament was phenomenal. It was on the 12th, so last Monday was when this was. Of course, if we go into the metagame, you'll notice that Rapid Strike Urshifu and ADP Zacian were the two most played decks. I think that's pretty standard. I think that these probably are the two top-tier decks right now in the format. I think that Rapid Strike Urshifu is phenomenal, but I think that ADP is also still very, very good. We have Mad Party a little bit high up here. I'm a little bit surprised by that, although this was a little bit earlier in the Battle Styles format. Mad Party does have a good Urshifu matchup, but overall it does struggle with ADP, struggles with E-Turn, and overall it's not as consistent as it might need to be sort of considered a higher tier deck. However, I do think that it's pretty well positioned in the meta right now. I think that it can pop off at any time and have really good placements, but overall, I think that this 32 Mad Parties was a little bit interesting. I don't know if it really should have been this high up in the metagame. If we go down here, we have Victini, Pikarom, and E-Turn. Now, these are three very, very solid sort of tier 2 decks that we'll probably see pretty commonly on these meta distributions here, but I don't think that they're going to be like super high tier. I do think Victini's really good, Pikarom's really good, E-Turn really good. Pikarom and E-Turn just don't really have as good of a position in the meta right now with Urshifu coming around, but they are really successful still, and they are really phenomenal decks, so no surprise to see him this high up here. Same with Luke Metal. I think that as long as people aren't really teching for Phoebe and Urshifu and E-Turn and things like that, Luke Metal is going to have a really good time. Does struggle with fire decks still, mainly, but overall has a pretty good matchup, especially against Dragapult and Mewtwo decks in general, so I do like Luke Metal up here. Dragapult right below it. I think that Dragapult struggles in a lot of matchups. It does have a good Mewtwo matchup and a good Urshifu matchup, but other than that, it kind of falls a little bit lackluster, especially against things like Peak and E-Turn and ADP and whatnot, especially like, Welder decks it does kind of struggle a bit with, but, nice to see it up there. And then we have some Mewtwo lists, Cressephilon, nothing too crazy here down lower on the meta game there. All right, let's get into the deck list. This is what you guys want to see. Now, this tournament here, this 370-player tournament, did have an ADP win. This ADP list is pretty interesting. Now, it's like a max consistency ADP. These days, this was, again, sort of the latter end of this week. ADP Hammers was phenomenally good. It's been very successful, and I do think that Hammers might be the best way to play ADP, but this max consistency version of ADP is also very, very cool. When I say max consistency, I just mean we're not running Hammers, we're running consistency cards. We have 4 Research, 2 Marnies, 2 Dedenes, 2 Crobats. Of course, we have 4 E-Switches, 3 E-Spinners to find those energies as quickly as we can and get them onto our ADP. And then the XP share as well to kind of save those energies, right? So after our ADP gets knocked out, we get to move one of those energies to our Zacians and kind of set up for our second attack to finish off the game and take our last 3 prize cards a little bit more consistently with the EXP share with the 4 Metal Saucers. Makes it that much easier to set up the Zacian. I do like the 4 Escape Ropes as well. I think that Escape Rope is very good in ADP. So this was the ADP list that won Hexters. Is it necessarily like the best list in the format? I'm not sure. But again, I do think it's really good. No surprise that ADP kind of won here. It might be actually the only top place finish that ADP's gotten. Next up at number 2, we had a Rillaboom Rowegg. Now, this is kind of the most, I guess, the most successful version of Mewtwo so far. I guess, or one of them, I suppose. It's really good. Of course, it's just a Mewtwo deck with the Rillaboom engine to accelerate the energies. We have the Rowegg and Rowlet and Alolan and Exeggutor Tag Team GX. Great attacks there. The GX attack is phenomenal. We have Incineroar GX to one-hit KO stuff, Dragonite GX to one-hit KO stuff, and then we have the Buzzmosa, which really does help this deck with the Mad Party matchup to take those extra prize cards, and when you knock out one of those single prize Pokemon, definitely really good. I like the Kricketune. I like the Vileplume GX. It's just a really great way to play grass. I think it might be the best sort of grass-type deck, even though it is a Mewtwo deck. which I really like. I like the tag call engine, the 2 Melowanas, 2 Goose Mahalas with the 2 big charms, as well as the weakness guard energy, capture energies, makes the deck that much more consistent and that much more bulky, right? 300 HP on a Rowegg or Mewtwo is actually pretty high, especially when you have 2 Melowanas in your deck. Gives you a lot of survivability to inevitably at some point use that Tropical Hour GX attack with 6 energies on and shuffle all of your opponent's energies on their board back into their deck and be really disruptive and almost kind of an auto-win situation in a lot of matchups. So I like this deck. Might be the best way to play Mewtwo. Who knows? I think there's 3 big main ways that people are playing the Mewtwo decks. One of them, of course, being this Rowegg version. The next one being this Victini sort of welder Mewtwo version, right? And we've covered a lot of Mewtwo's here on the channel recently, but this is just Welder Mewtwo. I mean, it's just Welder Mewtwo, but we do have a 2-2 Victini lineup thrown in here. The reason for this, and the reason why this works really well, I think, is because Victini has a low energy attack cost, right? So it's pretty easy to just set up in one turn, but the synergy is really good because Mewtwo Welder has an extraordinarily good matchup against other tag team Pokemon. Charizard GX, 4 energy, can do 300. We have, of course, Reshiram and Charizard, Incineroar GX, Heatran, all things that can one-hit KO tag team Pokemon pretty easily. We also have Fire-type attackers and Psychic-type attackers, which is a really good combination. But this deck can struggle a bit against the VMAX matchups, things like Urshifu, or I guess things like Eternatus more specifically. And that's where Victini VMAX really comes in handy because it does 2-hit KO any VMAX Pokemon and 1-hit KOs most V Pokemon. So I think that Victini for the VMAX matchups, Welder Mewtwo for the tag team matchups, I think makes this deck that much more viable. And the synergy here really works really well. I like the 2 escape ropes. I think the Tool Jammer is interesting. Can be actually a lot more clutch than people think it is. And there's not a whole lot of, I guess, other tool cards that would be super good in here. You could run an extra air balloon. You could run maybe a big charm. But other than that, I don't think it's too necessary. I think the Tool Jammer is pretty cool. Kind of niche, but again, really useful in a lot of scenarios. So that is the other Mewtwo list that has been really successful. We're going to take a look at Psychic Mewtwo here in a little bit. But before we get into that, I want to take a look at Little Drowsy's Green's Exploration, Gengar, and Mimikyu with Omastar lock deck. This deck is hilarious, but it actually has phenomenal synergy. Green's Exploration decks have becoming much, much more relevant recently in this format for whatever reason. Even though Marnie is still really, really common, I think that Greens is a phenomenal card, and it's a really good draw engine as well. This deck has really good synergy between the Omastar item lock and the Gengar and Mimikyu GX Poltergeist attack. Now, the whole idea with this is that we have Whorehouse GX we can use early in the game, kind of stall an extra turn out of our opponent, kind of buy us some time to set up this Omastar. Once we get this Omastar set up, it's phenomenal because our opponent cannot use item cards, right? And once they can't use item cards, it kind of piles up in their hand, and our Poltergeist attack from Gengar and Mimikyu GX does more damage the more trainer cards that are in our opponent's hand. So, for only 2 energies, Gengar Mimikyu mid to late game can almost one-shot anything pretty consistently. And Greens really helps to get this Omastar out more consistently. We have 3 unidentified fossils, 3 rare candies, 2 Omastars. We can get it out pretty easily. We even have 4 surprise boxes to put cards from our opponent's discard pile back into their hand. Going to be even better to set up those one-hit KOs with Gengar Mimikyu. Only 5 Pokemon in the deck, but realistically, your only basic Pokemon that you can possibly start with is Gengar Mimikyu, which is why we do not have a lot of Pokemon search in our deck. Just 1 tackle. That's it, realistically, but should be enough to grab our handful of Gengar Mimikyus. I like the power plants as well. All good stuff. Realistically, this deck has a lot more synergy than people might think it does. You can get the big charm on Gengar Mimikyu, give it 270 HP, a little bit harder to knock out, but overall, I like it. I like the list. It's pretty interesting nonetheless. And I think it has a lot more synergy than people think it does, so it's actually pretty cool. We actually saw Green's Dragapult, so a very similar list, but running Dragapult win Hegsters a couple weeks ago, which might be a kind of a where this deck list kind of got its basis from. But that is Hegster number 1 from season number 4. So that was kind of the first tournament of last week. After that, I guess we had Chill Series on Wednesday. We already covered most of these decks. We'll bring a few up here. But just to look at the metagame, now you'll see that there were 72 ADP in this tournament, so 16% of the meta share, pretty high in this tournament. But since it did win Hexters a couple days prior, this Chill Series tournament, of course, probably was influenced by that results, right? The metagame, which makes sense. Again, Rapid Strike Urshifu right up here. Then we had E-Turn, Mad Party, Blacephalon. Kind of makes sense since E-Turn has a pretty good matchup against ADP, right? So it makes sense. ADP won that Hexer tournament on Monday. More people ran E-Turn, knowing that people would be running ADP on Chill on Wednesday. So pretty good meta call there. Mad Party dipped off slightly, and then we had things like Blounds, Pikarom, Victini, Luke Metal, Mewtwo decks, all things that are pretty typical here in the format. 15 single strikes, which only had a 38% win rate, which is pretty bad. Looking at the win rates, the highest percentage win rate was actually Pikarom, which is interesting, with Rapid Strike Urshifu close behind. And then Dragapult actually did pretty well, both of these Dragapult archetypes, which is interesting to note for sure as well. But yeah, so that was the metagame. We already took a look at this Galaxy Mewtwo list, which is what people are calling it. We're going to take a look at it real quick. It's just Psychic Mewtwo with some Aurora energies thrown in there to utilize some of these extra attackers now. The Aurora energies are going to help us utilize the Garchomp and Giratina GX, the Reshiram and Charizard GX, and of course the Vileplume GX. These are really good attackers. This second list has a lot. Realistically, we like to go second. We have 2 Jirachi GXs in here, mainly so for consistency reasons, so we can get that Star Search attack off turn 1 to accelerate an extra energy onto our Mewtwo. It can be really good to get multiple Horror energies on, or to find that Aurora energy and attach it directly onto our Mewtwo and Mew GX. We have the Gengar Mimikyu, which is really good in ADP matchups to get that early game KO on an ADP. Can be really beneficial, pretty much guarantees the win in that scenario. We have Night Watch here from Trevenant and Dusk Noir GX. This is going to be extremely good mid to late game after a reset stamp or after a Marnie to kind of disrupt our opponent's hand and make sure that they don't really have too much going on. Can be really powerful, especially hitting for 150 consistently, right? Garchomp and Giratina, actually extraordinarily good. The 160 is really good for sniping up Dedennes, as well as even against ADP, if they're bricking for a turn or two, we can linear attack their ADP for 40 and then hit them again for the Calamitous Slash for 240, which is 280, which will get the KO on an ADP. Another good option. The Reshiram and Charizard is mainly here just for the outrage attack, and then we have the Incineroar GX for the one-hit KOs. It's a cool list. It's running Stealthy Hood as well, so this is a big one. Stealthy Hood really helps in the Urshifu matchup because Urshifu has a bad matchup against Mewtwo, right? The main things that they like to attack for to improve that matchup for Rapid Strike Urshifu is going to be Giratina, and it's going to be Mimikyu. One to discard our special energies, and the other one to kind of just turn off our Mewtwo from attacking after we get damage counters onto them. Stealthy Hood protects us from that and guarantees that Urshifu matchup is going to be pretty decent nonetheless. So I like the 2 Stealthy Hoods in the deck for sure. I like the energy lineup. I like everything about this list. When it works very, very well, and I think it's a very powerful list for sure. We're going to skip down a little bit. Now, the only other deck that I kind of want to take a look at, because it's a little bit different, is going to be this Greens Reshizard list. We saw that Greens Gengar Mimikyu. This is Greens, but with Reshiram and Charizard. Now, one thing that I do immediately want to point out with this deck is that we have 4 Volcanions and 3 Reshiram and Charizards. So no matter which card you're starting with, you're going to be in a pretty good situation either to donk your opponent or to set up with a Flare Starter and accelerate more energies. I like the Greens because it's able to search out some really key cards in the deck. I think Tag Call is really cool. I think that the Power Plant is actually really interesting for sure. And just the One of Hearth is actually pretty funny as well. The Tag Call engine for the 1 Malolana. Now, a really big factor of this deck is the 2 Big Charms and the 4 Heat Fire energies. Now, with 1 Big Charm attached, that brings Reshiram and Charizard up to 300 HP. We get 1 or 2 Heat energies onto there. That brings us up to 320, 340 HP, which realistically puts this Reshiram and Charizard almost at an HP count of a VMAX Pokemon pretty much, which makes it that much harder to KO. But the damage output potential of Reshiram and Charizard is phenomenal. So you're almost kind of artificially turning Reshiram and Charizard into a VMAX Pokemon, which is a really cool concept. And I think that the deck list is really cool. I think that it's really phenomenal. Greens Zard has been around for a while, and I think that it's even better now. And I think that this variant is absolutely phenomenal. So I just kind of wanted to show you guys that Reshiram and Charizard list for sure. I think it's definitely really, really cool. Okay, so we've taken a look at all 3 Mewtwo lists. We took a look at some other stuff here. Nothing else I really want to cover with Chill Series. We did do a separate video where we covered the top 16 decks from Chill Series number 27. So if you haven't seen that, go check out that video. Definitely, we cover all of the top 16 lists in depth. So, if you're more interested, definitely go check that out. But yeah, so Hegsters was here, 370, and then we had Chill on Wednesday, 450 almost. And then after that, this weekend, we actually had the $1,000 cash GGtoor Chill TCG Cup number 5. Which had almost 500 players. So the biggest tournament of the week, of course, right above our normal Chill Series event for the week. So, we kind of popped off a little bit, but it was a great tournament. Now, this tournament is a little bit different because it's a best of 3. Even though it's still standard format, the format really is a lot different in best of 3. A lot of the matchups, scenarios, and a lot of sort of the key factors that go into this format really are changed a lot in a best of 3 format. But taking a look at the metagame, we see that ADP dominated the metagame. 20% ADP when cash is on the line. People bring ADP. It's their bread and butter. They know how to play it, and that's how you know people are taking the tournament seriously. But again, Rapid Strike Urshifu high up there because it's a phenomenal deck. And one thing you'll notice is Crescephalon was actually 3rd. There is a pretty good reason for this. Whenever we run these big best of 3 cash prize tournaments, Chrysephalon Tempozard always does phenomenally. It's a really good best of 3 deck. It always performs very well in a best of 3 format. E-turn up here, Luke Metal, Mad Party, Pikarom, Mewtwo, and Mew, and Dragapult. All other stuff is pretty normal. Nothing too crazy up there. But I do think that the E-turn probably wasn't that great of a pick, but we did have one actually get 3rd in the tournament. That is Eddie Bomer, and I just want to show you this real quick. If we look at his matchups, this dude played 16 games of best of 3 in this tournament over a 2-day span over the weekend. Not a single Rapid Strike Urshifu matchup. I know Eddie's a great player, but his matchups were absolutely phenomenal. He was teching a Phoebe in here, so that's something to keep in mind. I literally didn't hit a single Urshifu, so just keep that in mind. That's probably a big reason why this E-turn list went pretty far. But if we take a look, it's just standard E-turn hammers. He was running 1 Phoebe with 1 Sableye. The reason the Sableye's in here is to load search and get the Phoebe out of the discard pile. You might be like, isn't Palpad better? I mean, in some scenarios, Palpad might be better than running a Sableye, but Sableye is much easier searchable with the 4 Pokecoms, 4 Quick Balls, and 3 Great Balls than it is to find a Palpad, right? So that's kind of why the Sableye's in there. Kind of a liability being another Stage 2 Pokemon on the bench, but you're running a bunch of Crobats anyway. Your ADP matchup's not that bad at all, especially because you're running 4 Crushing Hammers. So I like the Sableye. I think it was a pretty smart call, and I think that Phoebe's almost needed if you're going to win that Luke Metal matchup, which did come in clutch for Eddie, for sure. It did come in clutch. But yeah, this was the E-turn list. I think if you're playing E-turn, this is a very good way to play it. You'll notice no Weak Guard energies in here. And to be 100% honest with you, I don't think Weak Guard is that relevant in E-turn. Yes, an Urshifu with, of course, the, Martial Arts Dojo and the damage modifications. Yeah, you can get one-shotted by it. But for the most part, I mean, your main strategy is just going to be to KO a bunch of stuff. And the hammers hopefully help with that Urshifu matchup, right? But the thing is, your Urshifu matchup's not that great, and if you're Eddie, you're just not going to hit any Urshifus anyway, so keep that in mind. But yeah, that was the the E-turn list that was high up there. We'll take a look, and Pikarom actually won this tournament. This is Israel Sosa, a great player. But again, if we take a look at his matchups, this dude literally in 16 games only played 1 Urshifu. This was the 2nd most played deck in the tournament, by the way. He only hit 1, and he actually beat it, so there you go. The only losses he got were to E-turn, yep, and then another Mewtwo list, which is pretty interesting for sure. And that's Psychic Mewtwo. So again, it is what it is. The matchups sometimes go in the favor. It's best of 3. Sometimes, these deck lists that typically don't have great matchups go pretty well for you. But we'll take a look at his deck list, and I don't know if we're going to be surprised necessarily by this E-turn or by this Pikarom deck. It's probably pretty standard. One thing you'll notice though in this Pikarom list is that he's not running a Yell Grunt. Right? Typically you run 4 hammers and a Yell Grunt. Now he's just running 4 hammers and a Fan of Waves. This is kind of a better inclusion than a Yell Grunt. Kind of takes, gives you an extra, I guess, slot where you don't have to use a supporter. But it is really good because special energies are really common right now in the format. And I like the one Stealthy Hood. Similar to that Psychic Mewtwo list, Stealthy Hood is really good in the Urshifu matchup. And I think it might have been a big reason why he won that one Urshifu matchup for sure. Because Mewtwo, phenomenal for sure. So it can beat Urshifu. We've seen that. We just got this proven. But again, if you're playing Peak right now, might not be the smartest decision. But if you do get lucky and you don't get paired against Urshifu, you might win a tournament just like Israel did. Israel Sosa is a great player, though. So keep that in mind. He's a phenomenal player. So that probably had something to do with it. But yeah, Pikarom is still phenomenal. And I think that this is a very good skeleton or a very good 60 to base your deck off of. So keep that in mind. If we look at the standings, I guess Anti here. So Chrysephalon, like I said, really good best of 3 pick, did make it to finals. So let's take a look at his list. Nothing that we haven't seen before. Chrysephalon, Tempozard, pretty standard stuff. The Mew in here is super essential. I do like the 2 E-spinners. The 4 Fire Crystal, 4 Heart, 13 Energy, 1 Pokegear. That's fine. All good stuff in here. Nothing too surprising. I do think that if you're playing in a best of 3 tournament, this is an extraordinarily good pick. And I think that Tempozard, Chrysephalon is overall just a very good deck in general. So I do recommend maybe checking out and playing this list if you're interested in playing it. I think it's still pretty viable. So big shout out to Logan. If you guys like Tempozard, you like Chrysephalon, here it is. It's still a phenomenal list and definitely deserves to be shown. So keep that in mind. We had a Luke Metal up here. We can take a look at this Luke Metal list real quick. Why not? And I think that this is just going to be Tag Call Engine, Luke Metal. Nothing too crazy here. We have a Power Plant, which is interesting. I don't know if Power Plant is super relevant. Can help with the Mewtwo matchup. But overall, I think that the 2 Malalanas, 2 Cynthia Caitlyn, I think that the tool cards here is what's really important. The 3 Metal Goggles and the 2 Cape of Toughnesses really help in the E-turn matchup, as well as in that ADP Zacian matchup. So I think that this is a really a good tool card lineup to be running in the deck. Everything else here, pretty standard. It's just Luke Metal. In my opinion, one of the most annoying decks to play, but, you know, it's still a very viable option right now in the format. So I do recommend, if you are a Luke Metal player, continue playing it. Base it off this deck, perhaps. This is a very good list. I know GGtoor runs the Pokegear options, but here's just another Luke Metal list to go ahead and take a look at to satisfy your needs. And lastly, I want to take a look at this. Now, we saw Green's Gengar Mimikyu. We saw Green's Reshizard. Here it is. It's Green's Centiskorch. Like I said, Green's Exploration is just phenomenally played. It's just very common right now in this format. So you know what? Why not just run it with Centiskorch? Centiskorch has kind of been like overshadowed a bit by Victini, which is a bit more of a consistent option. And you know, it's just what people are choosing to play right now as a fire type VMAX Pokemon. Centiskorch, still a very, very, very good Pokemon, a very good attacker. I know most people last format were probably running the T-Brophy Special, Scoop Up Net, Jirachi engines. That's totally fine. That list is very, very good. But I think that with greens being so popular right now, being like kind of the flavor of the week, then you know what? Maybe this is a good option, right? I mean, we've seen 3 different greens lists do very well in just this 1 week. So perhaps, you know, it makes sense. I think that Centiskorch is a really good Pokemon. It's a really good card. A really good attacker, so I think it goes pretty well with greens as well. I like the Vitality Band in here. I like the 2 Fan of Waves, 2 Reset Stamps, the Power Plant in here, Malolana, so a lot of interesting stuff for sure. Just a very interesting deck for sure. So I really enjoy looking at that. That's a fun one. That's a fun one for me. But yeah, this has been the $1,000 cash GGtoor Chill TCG Cup number 5, the biggest tournament of the week. You'll notice that there wasn't a Rapid Strike Urshifu very high up here. The highest was Pedro Torres at 11th, and nothing really too popular until, you know, unless we go farther down and we see a little bit more of them. But I think the main reason why is I just think that, you know, these peak ROMs and these E-turns kind of got lucky in the matchups, in the placements that they played against. And I think that these Urshifu decks kind of got unlucky because there were a lot of Mewtwo decks and a lot of Dragapult decks running around that, you know, Urshifu can kind of struggle with. So I think for that reason, I think that since Urshifu didn't really do too well in the tournament, it kind of paved the way for things like Peak ROM and Eternatus to kind of shine a little bit more, right, and do a little bit better in this big best of 3 tournament. Kind of interesting. I don't know if that's always going to happen. I wouldn't kind of base the deck choice, you know, based off this tournament. I do think that Rapid Strike is still a phenomenal list, but I think that sometimes, you know, the meta just is unfortunate for a certain deck and it doesn't pan out. And I think that this was one of those scenarios for Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. I guess next up, what we can do is take a look at a smaller tournament here. The Sleepy Sundays, Battle Style Season 2 Weekly, April 18th. This was a smaller tournament, only 31 players. I think it's just for juniors and seniors. But you know what? It's worth taking a look at. The metagame here is going to be a little bit skewed just because the overall deck distribution, the sample size is smaller. So we're going to see some things a little bit strange here, like only 1 Rapid Strike Urshifu and 2 Corviknights, Corviknight VMAX being pretty high up here. So that's a little bit interesting. But if we take a look here at the standings, we see that peak, 1 E-turn Luke Metal peak, and then some Mewtwo decks down below. So nothing too crazy there. You know, it's just one of those things where when the tournament's a little bit small, sometimes, you know, it just kind of goes like that. You know what I'm saying? But you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. I'm getting a phone call. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. All right. Cool. So this was Sleepy Sundays. I mean, again, big shout out to Sleepy Sundays. I mean, they're an absolutely great tournament series. It's phenomenal, and I highly recommend if you're a junior, senior, go check them out. Lastly, I think there should be another tournament here that wasn't like starred. These are kind of like the official, I guess, recognized tournament series. They're typically a bit bigger, but you know, there are some notable tournaments that, of course, aren't starred. And I think one big one is if we go down to the 13th year, Chrollo Season 3, number 10. It had 110 players, so a decent-sized tournament. I think it's going to be worth taking a look at this right here. First thing you'll notice was that Urshifu Dragapult actually won this tournament, so we're going to take a look at that in a second. But the metagame, again, Rapid Strike Urshifu, ADP up here, high up here, everything else pretty normal. You know, nothing too different than what we typically saw in the other tournaments. But if we go and take a look at the standings, let's take a look at this tournament-winning Dragapult Urshifu deck list, because FloTK is kind of the man. He likes to run this list. This is his new bread and butter. And I did make a video on this deck, but except it was a little bit different. It was a similar archetype. It was Dragapult, it was Urshifu, but it was running the Octillery engine, which is kind of what people were running at the very beginning. I do think that the Jirachi Scoop Up Net engine probably is the better way to play the deck, so big shout out to FloTK for running it. But again, it's really good. I think that Urshifu, again, a great card in this matchup, does well against things like Peak and E-turn, but struggles with things like Mewtwo, right? So we're running Dragapult to kind of fix that matchup. And overall, I think that the deck is really good. It has a good matchup spread. I think that when you're combining these two archetypes, you're only running 2 Jirachis. It can be a little bit inconsistent at times. You can kind of brick pretty consistently, but it is really good. And when it works, it works. And even though this tournament was like 110 players, it's a pretty sizable tournament, and I definitely think that this list is not bad at all. And I think that FloatTK is a good player, and I think that this is a really good list. So absorb it here. I might make another updated video on Dragapult Urshifu in the future, but for now, here it is. It's still a viable deck list, and it's definitely one of the more interesting ones in our format right now. Going back to the standings, I do want to take a look at just this normal Rapid Strike list, because we haven't actually taken a look at a normal Rapid Strike deck yet. Okay. Going on 25 minutes in the video? Okay. So this is just a very typical standard Rapid Strike Urshifu deck. I've covered this several times in the format. For me, if it's not ADP with hammers or just ADP, I think that this is the best deck in the format. We just got a 4-3 lineup of Urshifu, 4 Jirachis. Scoop up nets, we have the Jirachi GX in here. We have Mew, Mimikyu, and Giratina, which are going to help us with that Mewtwo matchup, as long as they're not running Stealthy Hood, right? But for the most part, I think that the Phoebe's also really good for the Luke Metal matchup, the Decidueye matchup. All really good stuff here. The Mewtwo to take it out of the discard pile. I think the 9 energy counts, the 2 martial arts dojos, the 2 air balloons. Again, all really good stuff here. Nothing that I haven't covered already on the channel. Nothing too surprising. But I do think that this Rapid Strike Urshifu deck is one of the best decks in the format. And if you haven't played this deck already, or if you haven't looked into it, I highly suggest it, because it's absolutely phenomenal. So there it is. There's the Rapid Strike Urshifu fix for the video. We had to include it. Now, one thing that I want to include, well, I guess we can take a look at this Mad Party list, right? Because we haven't taken a look at a Mad Party list yet. Like I said, Mad Party is pretty well positioned right now in the format, being a single prize archetype with second type attackers. Definitely really good. Has a good Urshifu matchup, pretty good Mewtwo matchup. I think it does struggle with ADP. I think it struggles with E-Turn, and it does struggle with Dragapult. But other than that, I think that it's pretty good for sure. The 4 level balls makes it that much more consistent. This is super standard. It's just kind of what a typical Mad Party list probably looks like at this point. And I wouldn't deviate too much from this skeleton here, this 60, if you're going to be building a Mad Party list. I think this is kind of just the accepted way that people are playing Mad Party, and I think that that's fine, because this is a very, very good deck list. So absorb it. Here it is. Might be the best single prize archetype of our format right now, of our meta. So definitely pretty cool. So that was the Mad Party. Just wanted to brush it over real quick. Not much to say about it. But we do have a single strike Urshifu as well, which we're going to take a look at here, which did get top 8 at the 110-player Chrollo tournament. Now, the only problem that I have with single strike Urshifu VMAX is it relies heavily on the early game setup. What I mean by that is that you're not going to have a great chance of winning the game unless you get a single strike V down on your board turn 1, you attach to it, and you get multiple Houndours down on your board as well to evolve into Houndoom on your second turn. I think that's the only way that you're going to consistently start hitting for big damage early on in the game. And I think if you don't get that early game setup, this deck really struggles, and it can brick a lot of times. It's not super consistent. It's pretty consistent, but it relies a little bit too heavily on that early game setup. And if you delay in benching your Houndours or Houndooms, you're just going to struggle. And overall, it's a very hot or cold deck. You also, if you're playing like Mewtwo, you also have to try to get Jirachi GX down on your board as well, which can just be another more difficult thing to set up early in the game. I do think that this deck list has a lot of potential. I think that Chilling Reigns might have a few cards, which is coming out in the next set, which might make this deck a bit better. But for right now, I think it's just a little bit too inconsistent. It relies a little bit too heavy on the early game for it to be that viable. In my opinion, the playstyle is very similar to ADP, where you just set up early and kind of steamroll through the rest of the game, except ADP has a much more consistent early game and a much more sort of it's a lot less unforgiving ADP going into the mid and late game than this deck would be if you don't set up properly, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. So yeah, I mean, there it is, Single Strike Urshifu. It's pretty good. If you guys like it, maybe I'll make a video on Single Strike Urshifu at some point here in the future. There we go, though. I mean, that's probably going to be the video. I don't know. I don't know what else we should cover, to be 100% honest with you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, right? This is something different that I wanted to try. It's just sort of a weekly meta breakdown for all of the more notable tournaments throughout the entire week. We're going to do it weekly. Comment below. What do you guys want to see differently with videos like this? What would you rather see? How would you like me to make these videos? Did you like the video? Just kind of give me your feedback. I really want to make this a weekly thing. I want you guys to enjoy it. So I really just want to hear your guys' opinions. Don't forget to comment down below. But that's going to wrap it up. Don't forget, before we get out of here, don't forget to register for Chill Series number 28, which is actually tomorrow as I record this. So we can see here, Chill Series number 28, 205 people already registered, which is phenomenal. If we click on it, guys, look here. It says 200 battle styles. We actually have 250 battle styles in the prize pool. But on top of that, we have a gold quick ball, which will be given to first place. And this tournament is 100% free to register. So I highly suggest go registering for it. Link will be down in the description below. It's going to be one of the best chill series of all time. Me and Zach Lesage from the Yellhorn podcast are sponsoring it. We're also going to be casting and live streaming the top 8 matches or the latter half of the tournament live on YouTube. It's going to be phenomenal. I really can't wait. Link to register down in the description below. But I'm going to get out of here. About 30 minutes for this video. I kind of wanted to keep it 30 minutes, so hopefully we kind of did that properly. But let me know, guys. Just let me know. What do you guys think of this video? Comment below. Give me your feedback. Let me know how I can improve a video of this type, because I do want to make it weekly. I really appreciate you guys watching. I've been Matty from Chill TCG. I'm going to get out of here. Don't forget to register for Chill Series 28. Big shout out to our channel members, and big shout out to everybody in the Chill TCG community for, thank you for everyone for getting us to 3,000 subscribers. I really do appreciate that. All right, we're going to get out of here. Thanks, guys, for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow for Chill Series number 28.